The origins of the sea consciousness trace back to a period when the world was gripped by the Cold War. During this time, the Soviet Union wasn't just building nukes and spacecraft. They were diving headfirst into scientific projects that pushed the boundaries of ethics and reason. Some of these experiments were aimed at developing new weapons or technology. Others were more abstract. One such project revolved around the concept of the noosphere. Now, if you're not familiar, the noosphere is a philosophical idea that dates back to the early 20th century. It's the idea of a sphere of human thought. The concept was developed and popularized by the biogeochemist Vladimir Vernadsky, a layer of consciousness that surrounds the Earth, shaped by the collective thoughts, emotions, and knowledge of humanity. Essentially, it's like a mental ecosystem that connects us all. Soviet scientists believed that the noosphere wasn't just a metaphor, but a real, tangible phenomenon that could be measured, studied, and most importantly, exploited. This is where the sea consciousness comes in.
We are the result of an experiment.
The researchers theorized that by linking human minds into a single entity, they could tap directly into the noosphere, gaining access to its vast network of information and even influencing it. The potential was staggering. Imagine controlling human behavior, predicting the future, or even erasing war and suffering by reshaping collective thought. It sounded like the stuff of science fiction, but the Soviets were dead serious about it. To them, the noosphere was a frontier as important as space or nuclear energy, and the sea consciousness was their attempt to master it. Of course, achieving this wasn't going to be easy. The project required not only the brightest minds of the era, but also a staggering amount of resources and secrecy. The scientists selected for the project were sworn to silence, operating under the highest level of confidentiality. Their work took them to the Chernobyl exclusion zone, a perfect location for conducting experiments away from prying eyes. After all, the area was already off limits following the 1986 nuclear disaster. Using the remnants of Soviet psychic research and cutting-edge brain-computer interfaces, they began their experiments. The goal was to create a neural network of linked human minds, each one stripped of individuality, and merged into a single entity. The scientists believed that by connecting their consciousness to the noosphere, they could reshape reality itself, bending the laws of nature to their will. But as with most things in the zone, ambition quickly turned to disaster.
Unfortunately, we made a mistake.
The merging process wasn't smooth. The human brain isn't meant to share its thoughts with others on this level. Early test subjects suffered horrifying side effects: insanity, violent seizures, and in some cases, death. Despite this, the project continued. The scientists believed that the sacrifice of a few lives was a small price to pay for their vision. In their eyes, they were on the verge of unlocking godlike powers by fully integrating with the noosphere. But the noosphere wasn't as controllable as they had hoped. Whether it was a flaw in their methods or an unintended reaction to the psychic energy they unleashed, the experiments didn't just alter the test subjects, they altered reality itself. And then a blinding light erupts in the sky, bright enough to cause permanent blindness. Massive amounts of energy burst from the power plant, wiping out almost everyone in the exclusion zone, evaporating clouds, and transforming the zone itself. During one critical test, the link between the network and the noosphere was established, but the connection wasn't stable. Instead of the flood of knowledge and control they anticipated, the noosphere responded with a massive surge of energy. The resulting explosion tore through and created a rift in the noosphere, transforming the somewhat normal exclusion zone into the zone we all know today. The scientists were left reeling. Their attempt to control the noosphere had unleashed something far beyond their understanding or control. With the zone spreading and its effects intensifying, they faced an unthinkable reality. They had created a phenomenon that could threaten all of humanity. In their desperation, the surviving researchers made a radical decision. They would sacrifice their individual consciousnesses and merge themselves into the network they had created. They believed that by becoming part of the sea consciousness, they could contain the zone and perhaps even reverse the damage. This decision wasn't made lightly. By linking their minds to the unified mind, They effectively ceased to exist as individuals, becoming a single, collective entity. From their hidden bunker deep within the zone, the sea consciousness began to manipulate the environment, creating tools and barriers to keep the world at bay while they worked to stabilize their creation. The Brain Scorcher was one of their most infamous creations, a massive psi emitter designed to block access to the center of the zone. Anyone who ventured too close had their mind destroyed, either dying outright or becoming one of the mindless husks known as zombified stalkers. Another significant action of the sea consciousness was the creation of the monolith faction. The monolith was formed to serve as a shield, protecting the sea consciousness from outsiders who might discover its existence. Using powerful psychic manipulation, the sea consciousness brainwashed stalkers who ventured too close to the zone's center, turning them into fanatical warriors. These monolith soldiers worshipped the zone as a sacred entity, believing the monolith, a mysterious crystal located in the center of the zone, was the source of divine power. In reality, the monolith was a false artifact, a decoy created by the sea consciousness to keep intruders from learning the truth. But despite their efforts, the sea consciousness's control over the zone was far from perfect. In the events of Stalker's shadow of Chernobyl, the Brain Scorcher was deactivated by a lone stalker named S.T.A.L.K.E.R. This act exposed the zone's heart and paved the way for a direct confrontation with the sea consciousness. S.T.A.L.K.E.R.'s journey revealed the full extent of their influence. He was the one to uncover that the sea consciousness was responsible for the Wish Granter, the Monolith faction, and the zone itself. When S.T.A.L.K.E.R. finally reached the lab where sea consciousness was, they gave him a choice. Join the sea consciousness and help restrain the zone.
The zone is growing. We are trying to restrain its expansion, but humanity seems to be intent on hindering our work. Our resources are not limitless, and the bodies connected to sea consciousness eventually die. If you join us, we can restrict the zone's growth.
Or don't, and risk being killed.
If you decide otherwise, we cannot make a credible prognosis of the outcome. That depends on you.
The rejection to join is considered canon. S.T.A.L.K.E.R. survives, and he destroys the sea consciousness. And with that, their grip and control over the zone are gone.